Welcome to Teal Talks, where we have bold, intelligent conversations with innovators and leaders and influencers from around the world. My guests today are Rich Gelfond, who's the CEO of IMAX, Frank Del Rio, the CEO of Norwegian Cruise Line, and New Orleans-based restaurateur and former Top Chef contestant, Nina Compton. Welcome to Teal Talks. Now, I think it should be obvious to our listeners today that this talk is about having fun and how we are going to return to fun or return to leisure as we pull ourselves out of this pandemic. We've got guests who represent some of the most important parts of our hospitality and leisure industries, and guests who have been through a very tough several months since the pandemic began. So Rich, I'm going to start with you and just ask you to think back over these past many months. And I know they've been tough for businesses. I think I've heard you say it's tough to be in business when you have no revenue. You have 1,600 theaters in 82 countries. Tell us what it's been like for the last pandemic period.
So we actually had the misfortune, Julie, of being in it more than most people because China is our largest territory in the world. So we didn't go into it in March like everyone else did. We actually went into it in late January, and then it kind of cascaded throughout the world. That seemed to be a bad thing, but as a matter of fact, there turned out to be a silver lining in that, which is because our experience in China prepared us for what happened in the rest of the world. And that in early March, when the rest of the world shut down, we had a game plan that we could roll out extremely quickly. And then also, as the rest of the world was in a really bad place, we started to reopen in China and Japan and a lot of the Asian countries. So it's been tough, but we're an asset-light model. We don't own theaters. We license our technology to other people. We don't have a lot of fixed costs. So we came out of it. I mean, we're in the process of coming out of it pretty well. So China and Japan and Asia reopened in around last September and for us, and the box office has set all kinds of records. I know it's hard to believe for people who are sort of sitting still in the middle of a pandemic, but the biggest box office time of the year in China is Chinese New Year, which is February, and the best year ever was 2019, and we broke that record by 30% in 2021. In Japan, the two biggest movies of all time came out in the last 3 months, and that's with 50 to 75% capacity restrictions. So although we're still more or less break even on a lot of bases with movies reopening soon, and because we conserve cash during that period of time, given what I've seen so far, I think we're going to come out of it in even a strengthened position than we went into it.
So Nina, let me turn to you in a very different sector of the hospitality business, but one that normally would be enjoying the springtime and the rush of tourists showing up in New Orleans. What has this been like for you? You have two of the finest restaurants in the city, and I'm sure you have some stories to tell about how you coped with the last several months.
Thankfully, the government gave us some funding to help keep restaurants afloat, which was much needed. But I think now we're on the uptick of seeing business in a very positive light. People are coming out, thankfully, because of vaccines. And I think people just want to celebrate coming out on the other side. And we're seeing that a lot in restaurants where families are coming out, friends are, reconnecting. And the energy in the restaurants is so positive because people are just happy to be out and to be taken care of. So, we went through a really dark time, but I think it's, we can raise a glass and be very thankful that, we're making the turn.
Let's hope that trend continues, and it sounds like it will. I'm going to come back to you in a minute and talk with you a little bit more about the impact and the projection for where you think the business will go going forward. But let me first turn to Frank. Frank and I have had ongoing conversations over the past many months as his company and others have worked on how to return to healthy sailing. And this has been quite a sail in the process of getting from point A to point B. So Frank, tell us a little bit about what's been going on and where you are today at Norwegian Cruise Line.
Thank you, Julie. And it's interesting that here we are Nina and Rich and I competing to see which one had it worse over the last year. They've got nothing on me because we've been locked down for the last 14 months and we'll be locked down at least another 60 to 90 days at the earliest. And when I mean lockdown, I mean 100% shut down. The entire cruise industry was put on ice. And I'm hopeful that we can restart cruising from US ports this summer. As far as the future goes, Julie, I'll tell you, for everybody, 2019 was a record year. We're no exception. And today, we just had an earnings call last week, so I have to be careful what I say and don't say, but we are substantially better booked at this point of the booking cycle for 2022 than we were at this time for 2018, for 2019 sailing. So the pent-up demand for travel is real. You hear about it, you talk about it, but I can tell you with empirical data, with numbers, that cruisers are wanting to come back and cruise. It's a wonderful vacation. And they miss it. So the future looks bright. We just need to start cruising again, get that flywheel going, gaining some momentum. And I think that once the CDC gives us the green light, other public health administrations around the world that look to the CDC for guidance as the gold standard, they will open up their own borders, because this is a global industry. My three brands visit over 500 ports around the world. And today you can count on a couple of hands how many ports are open to cruising. So we've got a long way to go, but I think the worst is behind us.
I like that expression of light at the end of the tunnel, and vaccination clearly is playing a key role in that, although it's not the only part of things that have happened to try to improve the safety of all of your enterprises. Rich, I know you've talked about all of the things that have been happening in the theater environment so that people could enjoy movies safely and so on and so forth. Going forward, how are you thinking about the pent-up demand? Do you expect that you'll see a rebound, or what's kind of the outlook for your forecast coming out of this summer?
So it's a good time to be talking to you because I was in Los Angeles last week for a week. I'm based in New York, but I met the studio heads, filmmakers, directors. So I think I had a fair amount of input into my own crystal ball. And I think most people think it really is going to be a version of the Roaring '20s all over again, for a few reasons. And I think, one of the reasons is pent up demand, which Frank just talked about. I think people streaming in your living room was a good alternative and something to do when you were locked in your living room. But I spoke in front of a high school class recently, and I asked how many people, when they go to the movies, want to watch in their living room with their parents versus go out to a movie theater. And there wasn't one hand that said they prefer to sit in their living room. And I think a lot of people that feel that way. That's number one. Number two is there's so many movies to be released. So what happened, given the year that the movies were put on the shelf and there's a lot invested in them, there's a lot of movies in 21 and 22 that have to be released. So in the next few months, you have Black Widow from Marvel, you have Bond, you have the sequel to Top Gun with Tom Cruise, you have Dune, you have A Quiet Place, next year Jurassic World, Mission Impossible, Avatar. It's like the all-star team of movies of all time, plus one's not on the list. So I think you combine the pent-up demand with the availability of all these movies. And of course, to follow up on what your other guest said, I think people have to feel safe. The vaccines, the masking will still do that.
That's about the most optimistic outlook I've heard in a long time. So thank you for that. And I think it gives us all a little bit more hope. So Nina, in New Orleans, I think there are something like 89,000 hospitality workers. And I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal that really sort of looked at the innovations in the restaurant business broadly in the context of the pandemic. So all the takeout and drive-through and so on and so forth, but also the digitalization of menus and bill paying and so on and so forth. When you're thinking about your business going forward, and I hope you too experience that pent-up demand, count me in, I'll be among the first to be out eating any chance I get. Do you see these changes as being durable in your industry? And what are you thinking would be your, the real change paradigm for your businesses?
I think, as I said earlier, that, people do want to come out. We are a social society that love to meet and hug and touch people and, share moments together. And I think that's what's bringing the world back together, because we can come back together safely. I think restaurants have changed a lot of things, like you said, with the paying. My husband and I, we talked about handheld payment systems for years. And he's like, oh, that's only in Europe. And now we're using them. So a lot of those things where it's contactless payment has helped, with the businesses. And I think those things, printing menus every day, we had to do for the pandemic. And now we're doing a QR code, which is much easier. People can have it on their phones. It just makes, I think, running a business a little more easy, because people feel like it's a step forward. And I think those things will definitely stick in that sense, because, a lot of things we have changed. And I think those things will definitely stay in our model going forward. Takeout, we never used to do takeout before, and that's a huge thing. So I think those things definitely have, they're gonna be something that's gonna stay for a while with restaurants. Other people have pivoted and never thought we'd be doing those things, outdoor seating. Living in New Orleans, it does get very hot in the summer. And for that reason, we didn't have outdoor tables. And now we have them in both restaurants, and it's actually really nice.
So everyone is thinking about how to take the best of what we've learned from coping and moving it forward. And Frank, without getting into all the details, I've been fascinated with some of the technologies and the digital approaches that the cruise lines are considering for doing things like contact tracing. I'm sure a lot of people don't recognize what really is going on the ships in terms of air handling and the device opportunities, in addition to vaccines and the testing protocols. Can you just say a little bit about some of the things you're trying to see how they might contribute to that safer sailing?
We've spent tens of millions of dollars to retrofit the air handling system on board all the vessels, so that we pump in more fresh air throughout the vessel. We converted all the air conditioning filters to MERV 13. We have electronic digital contact tracing, which may be less important in the future, especially in a fully vaccinated environment like we're proposing. We're not going to sail unless everybody on board is 100% vaccinated. But we are moving to digital everything that we can. Of course, the menus, that's an easy one. But for example, the traditional muster drill, where everybody comes together and goes into close quarters and puts on their life jackets, that now will be done electronically from the comfort of your stateroom. So we're doing everything possible because, quite frankly, we're so desperate to cruise. I mean, we're the only industry, forget hospitality, where we're not allowed to operate. We're not allowed to do takeout. We're not allowed to have smaller groups of people in a theater, for example. In Rich's case, we're just shut down.
Nina, you mentioned shot glasses.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by a program that Mayor Cantrell implemented in New Orleans to basically encourage the hospitality industry to be part of the vaccination campaign, because although the state is, I think, no longer under restrictions, the city still has a few restrictions and not really eager to completely reopen until the immunization levels have improved. So as I understand it, some restaurants and leaders in the restaurant and other hospitality communities are helping with the vaccine program. Even some of them are offering vaccines on site or helping their employees and giving a free beer or a free shot, for a shot. So.
Well, we had quite a few restaurants and, the small hotels, just announced that they're doing, vaccination day. Come in and get a shot and have, some people offering family meal just to get the vaccinations up, because, we were kind of, I think, ahead of the curve in terms of getting our population mostly vaccinated, which is really good. Our mayor has done a really good job of keeping cases down and keeping the restrictions. And luckily enough that the locals have kept everybody in line too, because they want to get back to normal life as well. So collectively as a community, I think we have done a really good job of making sure people get vaccinated and sharing information about where you can get vaccinated. So that has helped tremendously in helping rebuild the city, because, I just can't imagine, New Orleans without restaurants and bars and musicians. That's our lifeline. That's our fabric of our city. So to see that people care enough to get vaccinated and try and, get us back on track has been amazing.
So all three of you have given us a reality check of how hard it's been, how important it is for people, not just your customers, but broadly in terms of communities and economies. But also I'm sensing optimism for the roaring 20s. Maybe it's the roaring 22s ahead of us as we move beyond this. So I'm with your customers. I love movies. I love to eat. I love the ocean. And I really think that hearing from you about what the outlook is a breath of fresh air, truthfully. But I'd love to know if you could send a message to your customers, what message would you really like them to hear from you now? And Rich, I'll go to you first, because I know you've thought a lot about this already, but what do you want your customers to know about returning to fun?
Despite the narrative that the world has changed forever, and people, in the case of Nina, are going to stay in their kitchens forever, or in the case of movies, they're going to stay in their living rooms forever. I don't have a good analogy for Frank, but maybe they'll stay in their swimming pools forever. I think these industries have been around a very long time. Human beings are social creatures. They crave companionship. They crave going out. They like being in groups. And I think there will be aspects of the world that will change and were accelerated because of this. So the message I would distill is hang in there. We're close to the finish line. And I think everybody will be surprised how much it goes back to normal.
Great to hear. Frank, what's your point of view?
Well, the cruising experience is going to be better than ever. We're going to preserve all the elements that people like about a cruise, the visiting the multiple destinations, the freedom of choice, the multiple restaurants, all the wonderful venues we have on these incredible new ships that we're building and the ones that we already have. And so we don't have to nudge customers very much. They're there, they're aligned with us. They want to get back to the high seas, and we can't wait to welcome them on board.
So Nina, I'll let you have the last word.
Well, I think, as the other panelists said as well, that we're going to come back, I think, bigger, better, stronger. I think, when we look at things, in the past previous years, I think we've taken a lot of things for granted. I think we've taken travel for granted. I think we've taken, eating out. I think, going on a vacation on a cruise ship, we've taken those things for granted. So I think now when people go out for something, it was kind of stripped from them for a long time, and they now appreciate more than ever. So I see a lot of people that come to the restaurants that, jumped on a plane to come to New Orleans for a 3-day vacation. They're just happy because they appreciate it more than ever. And I think that's what it comes down to, is appreciating the luxury of going to see a movie or taking a cruise ship, vacation. It's about appreciation.
That is a lovely way to end this conversation. And I do hope that in the near future, I will be able to go to a movie in New Orleans, have a lovely meal, and get on the cruise ship that sails into the Caribbean with you and all of my friends. So thank you so much for joining us for Teal Talks, and good luck with the roads ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.